A child doesn't belong in a house like this. That was the first thing Richard Callahan said when he saw Lily, the little girl hiding behind his housemaid's dress. Angela tightened her grip on her daughter's hand, voice barely a whisper. We just need a place for the night. She won't bother anyone. Richard stepped closer, eyes cold. This isn't a shelter. I don't pay to house strangers. Angela lowered her head, lips pressed tight. Lily stayed silent. But on the table she left behind a crayon drawing of a tall man. Beneath it, one word. Dad? Richard was about to turn away, until something glinted from Angela's locket and made him stop. Inside was an old photograph. The face in it was his mother's. Richard sat at the dining table reading headlines on his tablet. He didn't look up when Ethan entered. She's here, Ethan said. The new housekeeper. Name's Angela Moore. She has a little girl with her, Lily. Richard didn't respond. Ethan added, The agency said she's clean, quiet, good record. Still no reaction. Richard sipped his coffee. And the child? Very quiet. Keeps to herself. Richard finally looked up. I don't want distractions. If the kid makes noise, they're both out. Ethan nodded. Understood. Across the hallway, Angela guided Lily down the steps. The girl moved slowly, hugging her rabbit, eyes wide but calm. Angela gave a small nod toward Richard from afar. He didn't return it. He went back to reading. But Lily paused and stared at him, not with fear, with quiet curiosity, as if she knew something he didn't. The paper was left on the kitchen counter. Richard walked in, glanced down, and froze. A child's drawing, crude, colorful. A tall man in a suit. A little girl with curly hair. The word Dad, written across the top in shaky crayon. Angela noticed too late. Lily was just drawing. He grabbed the paper, eyes burning. This is me? Angela said nothing. She thinks I'm her father? No, sir, she doesn't understand. A beat. He tore the drawing in two. Don't let her play those games again. I'm not anyone's father. Angela stepped back, swallowing her breath. Lily peeked from behind the doorframe, silently watching. Richard turned away, dropping the torn paper in the trash. He didn't see Lily slip away, her tiny hands clenched tight. He didn't ask why she drew that. He didn't want to know. Angela sat on the edge of the bed, brushing Lily's curls gently. The room was dim. Outside wind touched the windows. Lily's voice was small. Was it bad that I drew him? Angela didn't answer right away. Lily looked up. He looked like a dad. I thought maybe... Her voice faded. Angela pulled her closer. Sweetheart, some people don't know how to be kind. That's not your fault. Lily clutched her rabbit. But is it wrong to wish someone was your dad? Angela's eyes welled, but she smiled. No, it means your heart is still good, Lily whispered. He looked sad, even when he was mad. Angela nodded. He probably is. They sat in silence. Angela didn't say it out loud. But that same sadness once lived in someone she used to know. Angela sat alone at the small kitchen table. The house was quiet. Lily had fallen asleep. She reached under her collar and unclasped the chain around her neck. The locket was old, worn at the edges but carefully kept. She placed it on the table, gently opened it. Inside, a small photo. A young woman with soft eyes and a quiet smile. Angela stared at it for a long time. Hi, Mama, she whispered. She traced the edge of the photo with her thumb. She looks like you, Lily's voice came from the doorway. Angela turned. Lily stood barefoot, rubbing her eyes. Angela smiled. That's your grandma, Camille. She gave me this before I was even your age. Lily stepped closer. Was she nice? Angela nodded. The kindest person I've ever known. Outside footsteps echoed faintly down the hallway. Angela quickly closed the locket. Richard entered the kitchen for coffee. He paused when he saw something on the table. A silver locket, slightly open. Curious, he leaned closer. Inside, an old photo of a woman. Young, graceful, eyes calm, lips soft. His breath caught. That face. He reached out, picked it up, held it under the light. Same hair, same cheekbones, same look his mother had in her college portrait. His hand trembled slightly. He whispered, Margaret? A sound behind him. Angela stood in the doorway, startled. I'm sorry, she said quickly, walking over. I forgot to put it away. Richard closed the locket, handed it to her without a word. She took it gently, then turned to leave. He watched her go, saying nothing, but something pulled at him now. Something old, something not yet understood. Angela stood in the hallway, holding a mop and a heavy bucket. Richard passed by, stopped, and looked at her. You haven't cleaned the garage floor, he said. I plan to do it tomorrow, sir. Lily's not feeling well tonight. He didn't blink. Do it now. The garage smells like dust and mildew. I don't pay for excuses. Angela nodded slowly. Yes, Mr. Callahan. She turned and walked toward the back entrance, bucket in hand. Lily sat on the stairs, watching. Richard noticed, but said nothing. Angela paused, gave her daughter a reassuring glance. Lily whispered, You don't have to. Angela smiled gently. It's okay, baby. Just for a little while. Richard's voice came from behind, cold and final. This house runs on order, not emotions. He walked away. Angela continued forward, shoulders heavy, feet quiet on the stone floor. The fridge door creaked open. Lily stood on tiptoes, reaching for a small yogurt. She looked around, quiet. Just as she turned, Richard entered. He stopped. She froze. What do you think you're doing? His voice cut through the air. Lily held the yogurt close to her chest, silent. Angela rushed in, breathless. I'm sorry, sir. She was stealing, he snapped. Is this what you're teaching her, to sneak around in someone else's house? Angela's face tightened. She was hungry. She's not my responsibility, Richard barked. Neither are you. Lily stepped back, eyes wide. Angela wrapped an arm around her. We won't touch anything again. Richard shook his head. You people always want sympathy, but you never earn respect. He turned and walked out. Lily lowered her head, holding the unopened yogurt with both hands. Angela stood by the doorway of the study, her voice soft. Mr. Callahan, I wanted to say I'm sorry about earlier. Richard didn't look up from his papers. She's just a child, Angela continued. She didn't mean harm. I should have watched her better. Still silent. She stepped closer. We'll be more careful, and thank you for not sending us away. Richard finally looked at her. I don't need your gratitude. Angela held his gaze. I just wanted to show respect. His voice dropped, sharp and cold. Kindness doesn't buy space here. You do your job. That's it. Angela nodded once. I understand. She turned and walked out, closing the door behind her. Richard stared at the space where she had stood. His jaw clenched. He hated when people assumed he had a heart to thank. The hallway was dark. Richard walked toward the kitchen for water. Then he heard it. A soft melody, almost a whisper, floating from the guest wing. He paused. Angela's voice, gentle, low, singing to Lily. The tune was familiar, too familiar. He leaned slightly against the wall, listening. It wasn't just any lullaby. It was her song. His mother's. The one she used to hum when he couldn't sleep. The same rhythm, same warmth. His fingers curled slightly against the wall. He hadn't heard it in decades. He didn't move closer. He didn't interrupt. He just stood there, listening. When the song ended, silence filled the hallway again. Richard stayed for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. Slower than before, morning light cut across the dining room table. Richard sat alone, coffee untouched. On the end of the table lay the silver locket, closed, still. He reached for it, opened it slowly. There she was, Margaret Callahan. Not just a resemblance, her. Same eyes, same quiet strength in the smile. He ran his thumb over the photo, every detail clear. It hadn't faded. He hadn't seen that image since he was a boy. How did Angela have this? He closed the locket, held it in his hand for a long moment. His mind searched for reasons, explanations, logic. But none came, just a growing ache in his chest, and the echo of a lullaby that refused to leave. He set the locket down again, carefully, like something sacred. Richard sat at his desk, the locket still in his hand. A memory returned, faint but real. He was 10. Sitting on the porch steps, Margaret was beside him, speaking softly. She saved me, Richie, she had said. A woman with kind eyes. She gave me food when I had none, gave me her blanket when it snowed. He had asked, was she family? No, Margaret smiled, but she treated me like I was. Richard blinked, brought back to the present. He never knew more. Margaret rarely spoke of that time again, but now, holding the locket, something clicked. What if Angela's mother was the same woman? He looked down at the photo once more. It wasn't just a resemblance anymore. It was a link, a bridge across time, one he had never crossed until now. Angela was folding towels in the laundry room when Richard entered. He didn't speak at first, just stood in the doorway, holding the locket. She looked up, her hands paused. He held it out, open. Where did you get this? Angela's face stayed calm, but her eyes shifted. He stepped closer. That's my mother, Margaret Callahan. She didn't deny it, didn't confirm it, just looked down at the towels again. Richard's voice lowered. I asked you a question. Angela folded one more towel slowly, then placed it on the stack. Still silent, Richard waited, one breath, then another. But she said nothing. He closed the locket with a click and turned to leave. At the door he stopped. I don't like being lied to. Angela's voice, almost a whisper, followed him. I haven't lied. I just haven't answered. Richard stepped into the hallway, still holding the closed locket. He didn't notice Lily at first. She came running from the side room, barefoot, holding a crayon in one hand. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around his leg. He froze. She looked up, smiling. I like you, she said. Richard blinked, startled. Angela appeared a moment later, her voice gentle. Lily, sweetheart, come here. But Lily didn't move. You look serious, she said to Richard, tilting her head, but not mean. Richard cleared his throat, unsure what to say. You remind me of someone in my dream, she added, and Angela reached for her hand. Come on, honey. Lily let go slowly. As she walked away, she looked back once. Richard stood still, the locket pressed tightly in his hand. He didn't smile, but he didn't walk away either. Richard sat in his study, the door closed tight. He opened the file marked Angela Moore. Basic information, employment records, reference, then a line caught his eye. Mother's name, Camille Johnson. His breath stopped. He leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on the name. Camille. He hadn't heard it in over 30 years. She was his first love. A quiet girl with big dreams and a laugh that softened him. They met in college. It ended when his father found out. Wrong family, wrong background, wrong color. Richard had walked away, or rather, been forced to. He never saw her again. Until now? He stared at the file, hands trembling slightly. Camille. He whispered her name like it still mattered, because somehow it did. He remembered the porch. Camille sat beside him, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes held hope. Richard's father stood on the steps, voice cold. This ends now, he said. You will not ruin our name for a fling. Richard's mother stayed silent, watching from the doorway. She's not a fling, Richard said, barely above a whisper. His father's tone cut sharp. She's not one of us. Camille didn't cry. She stood up, tall and calm. If he's not strong enough to choose, I'll save him the pain. She walked away. Richard didn't follow. He'd wanted to. Every part of him had wanted to. But he didn't move. He stayed frozen between fear and loyalty. And that silence, it had haunted him ever since. Back in the study, Richard closed the file. What he'd buried years ago had just come back, alive and breathing in his house. Richard opened the old box in his closet. It smelled like time, dust and paper, things left untouched. He searched through photos, notes, scraps of the younger life. Then he found it. A small envelope, faded edges, sealed. To Richard Callahan, written in Camille's handwriting. He hadn't seen it before. He opened it with care. Inside, a letter. Short, simple, raw. I never wanted you to choose between me and them, but I needed you to know. I was pregnant, not asking for anything, just the truth. Her name is Angela. Richard's hands shook. He read the letter twice, then a third time. His mind raced backward, to the moment he let Camille walk away, to everything he hadn't said, and everything she had carried alone. He closed his eyes, all these years, and he never knew. Richard sat alone in the lounge, staring into the fireplace. No flames, just silence. Lily entered quietly, holding something behind her back. She walked up, small feet barely making a sound. I made a new picture, she said. He looked at her, said nothing. She handed him the paper. 3 figures, a tall man in a suit, a woman with curly hair, a little girl holding both their hands. At the top, written in purple crayon, my family. Richard held the drawing longer than he meant to. Lily looked up at him. It's okay if you don't want to put it on the fridge. I just wanted you to see it. He folded the paper once, carefully. I saw it, he said. She smiled and walked away. He sat still, paper in his hand, truth in his chest. The house was still. Richard sat at the edge of his bed, letter in one hand, Lily's drawing in the other. He looked at both. Angela, her name, her eyes, her silence. Camille's letter didn't lie. Lily wasn't just a child under his roof. She was his granddaughter. Angela was his daughter. His breath caught in his throat. He pressed the heels of his hands to his eyes, but the tears came anyway. Slow at first, then heavy. He hadn't just rejected a stranger. He had shut the door on his own blood. Twice he had missed everything. A childhood, a life, a chance to be more than a man who builds walls. Now those walls felt like a prison. He cried quietly, the way men do when they realize too late that love had been standing in front of them the whole time. Richard moved quickly through the hallway. Angela's room was open. Too quiet. Too clean. No bags, no toys, no sound. The bed was made. On the pillow, a single envelope. He picked it up with both hands, slower than he meant to. Mr. Callahan, written in careful cursive. He opened it. Thank you for shelter, even if it came with silence. I never asked you to care. I knew you wouldn't. But Lily deserves better than cold glances and closed doors. We didn't want to stay where we weren't wanted. No signature, just folded paper. Neat. Final. Richard stood in the empty room. The chair in the corner still held Lily's drawing. He sat down, and for the first time in years he didn't feel powerful. He felt small. Richard stepped out of his car onto cracked pavement. The street was narrow, lined with rusted fences and peeling paint. He checked the paper in his hand again, an old address listed on Angela's file. Building 12, Unit C. He walked past broken mailboxes and faded numbers on crooked doors. This wasn't a place for a child. He reached the unit and knocked once. No answer. He knocked again. A curtain moved behind the window, then the door opened just a little. An old woman peeked out. I'm looking for Angela Moore, Richard said. The woman studied him for a long second, then nodded toward the stairs. Top floor, back unit. He thanked her. As he climbed the worn steps, one thought kept looping in his mind. She left a mansion to come back to this, and he was the reason why. Richard reached the top step, paused, and knocked. The door creaked open. Lily stood there, still in her pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit. She looked up, then smiled wide. Without a word, she ran forward and wrapped her arms around his waist. I knew you'd come, she whispered into his coat. Richard stood frozen, heart pounding. He slowly placed a hand on her back, not fully sure how to hold something so small, so trusting. Angela appeared in the doorway, eyes tired, unsure. Richard looked at her. No anger, no walls, just truth. I read the letter, he said. Angela nodded once, quiet. Lily looked up at him again. Do we have to go somewhere else now? He knelt down, eye level with her. No, sweetheart, not this time. And this time he meant it. Angela stepped fully into view. She didn't speak, just stood there, unsure of what to expect. Richard turned toward her, eyes wet, lips trembling. Then slowly he dropped to his knees. His voice cracked. I didn't know. Angela stayed still. He looked up at her, broken in ways pride had once hidden. You're my daughter, he whispered. You're the gift I lost, and didn't even know I had. Tears streamed down his face. Angela blinked, trying to hold her own. Richard reached forward, but didn't touch her. I can't take back the years, or the silence, or what I let happen, but I need you to hear me say it. I'm sorry. Angela took a small step closer, not ready to forgive, but no longer ready to walk away, and that was enough for now. Angela walked to the small drawer beside the couch. She pulled out an envelope, worn, folded many times. This was from my mother, she said quietly. She wrote it before she passed. Richard took the letter with care. He opened it and began to read. If he ever finds you, tell him I never blamed him. He was young, he was scared. I knew he loved me. That was enough. Tell him Angela has my strength, and maybe a little of his stubbornness, too. Richard's eyes blurred. He lowered the letter, holding it to his chest. She forgave me, he said, barely audible. Angela nodded. She never hated you, not once. Richard looked at her, voice shaking. I wish I had known. Angela's voice softened. She wanted you to know when you were ready. And now, finally, he was. Richard sat with the letter still in his hand. He looked at Angela, then at Lily playing quietly on the floor. I've spent my whole life building walls, he said. Now I just want to open one door. Angela listened, silent. I missed everything. Your first steps, your birthdays, the years I didn't even know you existed. His voice cracked. I don't expect forgiveness, not today, maybe not ever. He stood slowly. But I want to try, if you'll let me. Come home, both of you. Angela's eyes flickered with hesitation. Years of hurt don't vanish in minutes, but Lily looked up. Does that mean I get my own room? Richard smiled through tears. The biggest one in the house. Angela exhaled, deep and shaky. It wasn't a promise of perfection, but it was a beginning, and for the first time, he truly meant every word. The front door opened slowly. Richard stepped aside, letting Angela and Lily walk in first. The house was the same, but everything felt different. Lily's eyes lit up. She let go of Angela's hand and ran ahead, barefoot on the polished floors. "Can I look around again?" she asked, already halfway down the hall. Richard smiled softly. "It's yours now, every room." Angela stayed near the entryway, quiet. One hand rested on the strap of her bag. "You don't have to unpack today," Richard said gently. "Just be here." She nodded, still unsure. Lily's voice echoed from another room. "Mom, there's a piano!" Angela let out the smallest laugh. The first in days. Richard didn't say much more, but the silence between them was no longer heavy. Ethan stood by the kitchen island, sorting the mail. Richard entered, calm but purposeful. Angela and Lily's laughter echoed faintly from upstairs. Ethan glanced up. "Did everything go okay, sir?" Richard didn't answer right away. He looked around, same walls, same silence, but something had shifted. He set his keys on the counter. "This house," he said, voice low, steady. Ethan paused. Richard continued. "For years, it was just mine. Built it, protected it, filled it with everything but people." He looked Ethan in the eye. "From now on, it's not just mine." A pause. "It's ours." Ethan blinked. "Sir!" Richard smiled just enough. "Angela, Lily, this house belongs to them too." Upstairs, footsteps ran down the hallway. Laughter followed. For the first time in years, Richard didn't feel like a guest in his own life. He felt home, because it was no longer just his. The living room was quiet. Lily stood on a chair, carefully taping a piece of paper to the center of the wall. Angela watched from the couch, smiling softly. Richard entered and paused behind them. The drawing was simple. 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one curly-haired, one small. Above them, in bright letters, "Family is love, not blood." Lily turned around. "Do you like it?" Richard looked at the drawing for a long moment. He nodded. "I do." She climbed down from the chair and stood beside him. "I used to think family was just who you're born with," Lily said. "But now I think it's who stays." Angela's eyes welled up. Richard knelt beside Lily, resting a hand on her back. "Then I'm staying," he said. And this time he meant forever. Angela stood in the hallway near the family wall. Framed portraits lined the space, businessmen, soldiers, weddings. But one frame sat empty, dust on the nail. She held the photo carefully. Margaret Callahan, the woman who had once been erased. Angela brushed the frame clean with her sleeve, then hung the picture in its place. Centered, visible. Lily stood beside her, holding her hand. "Is that her?" she asked. Angela nodded. "That's your great-grandmother." Richard appeared behind them, saying nothing, just watching. Angela looked back once, as if asking permission. He gave a slow nod. No words needed. For the first time, Margaret's face stood among the rest. Not hidden, not forgotten. Angela stepped back, hand still holding Lily's. 3 generations, 1 wall, and no one missing anymore. Richard stood by the window, watching Lily chase sunlight across the lawn. Angela placed a cup of tea beside him, then joined him in silence. The house was full now, not of noise, but of presence. He spoke quietly. "Sometimes, losing something is the only way we remember what mattered." Angela listened. "But not everyone gets the chance to make it right." He turned to her. "I did." She gave the smallest nod. The camera lingers on the family photo wall. Margaret, Camille, Angela, Lily, all connected, finally seen.